On the role played by the former governor of Lagos State, Senator Bola Tinubu, in Nigeria's recently concluded presidential elections, my host today says there is no doubt
that everybody understands that without Asiwaju Tinubu, there is no APC. He is the greatest politician Nigeria has ever had, either before or after independence. He has created and galvanized the greatest coalition in Nigerian history, and also the first to use that coalition to knock out a seemingly impregnable foe in office.
Well, hello and welcome. This is 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajitumobi. Thank you for joining me on the program today. Now, in a couple of weeks from now, a new president will emerge in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Muhammadu Buhari was a former head of state and was recently elected with over 15 million votes. He was the candidate of the APC, the All Progressives Congress, a party that emerged after mergers of at least 4 major political parties. And as Buhari ascends the throne, so to speak, Goodluck Jonathan therefore goes down in history as the first democratically elected president in Nigeria to lose his re-election bid. What then can we expect from the incoming administration of Muhammadu Buhari and the All Progressives Congress? As we count down to May 29, 2015, what we call Democracy Day here in Nigeria, the APC has appointed a 19-member transition committee whose chairman will be Ahmed Joda. The members of the transition committee include John Udige Oyegun, who is the national chairman of the APC, Doyin Salami, Adamu, Wale Edun, Bola Deshola, Festus Odimegu, Nike Abodenre, Rotimi Amechi, the governor of Rivers State, Audu Ogbe, Bode Mustafa, Hadi Sirika, Ogbonnaya Onu, Abubakar Amalami, Lawal Isa, Muhammad Ayatuddin, Solomon Dalong, Tam David West, and the National Publicity Secretary of the APC, Lai Mohammed. So, join me after the break as I count down 60 minutes with Sam Omaseye. He's a columnist and the chairman of the editorial board of the Nation newspaper. Welcome back. Welcome, Mr. Omaseye. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
I'm deeply delighted to be here.
I thought we should start with our election review. We haven't seen since General Buhari won that election. But recently, it looks like the current president, Goodluck Jonathan, is singing a new tune, and people are thinking that maybe he's changed his mind about having conceded. I mean, we've seen warnings to the APC not to take his magnanimity for foolery. What do you make of all the events that have come after the election? Was he your hero after conceding defeat to Buhari?
Well, that's a very good question. It's also very loaded. I think people have tended to trivialize the meaning of the word hero. Heroism is a very big word. It goes down to the consciousness of a society. There's a reason why there's what they call the epic poem, like the poems of John Milton, Chaka the Zulu, and things like that, which present heroes in the genuine sense. A hero is one that is ready to lay his life for the society and what he believes in, but also able to carry with him the profundity of the society's consciousness, and values with him. So when we use the word hero,
Yes.
we tend to trivialize it. You can say what he did was heroic, but was he a hero? Not in my book. You were already defeated and you conceded. Isn't it natural for you to do so?
Yes, but
that does not make you a hero. The argument though is that, well, it's not something that anybody expected.
Yes, and you know how it is
yes,
here. We never lose an election.
We never lose an election. I said there are pressures on you not to do that, and that if you did it, you have really let down a huge segment of your supporters.
Yes.
And actually, I met a few people who said, why did he concede?
Yes.
He shouldn't have conceded because people don't concede in Nigeria. True, but Jonathan was cornered into conceding. That's the point. He was cornered into conceding because one, the United States, the British people surrounded him, and even the Commonwealth group. Yeah. They're all there. Abdul Salam, they're all surrounding him, saying, gentlemen, this is how it goes. Let us follow the process as it is. Yeah. The day even when the election was being counted, there was a letter from the US, a release saying that there should be no interference with the election. So he did what he ought to have done and what he had no choice other than to do, and that was to concede. Yes. But having conceded, we said, well, he could have followed the Gbagbo example and said, no, I lost, but I'm going to dare the consequences. Yeah. To that extent, would we say he did it because he was heroic or because he wanted to save his head? That question is still left out there. Yeah. So when you want to look at the heroism of a leader, you have to look at the full tapestry of the person's doing. You have to look at the way he emerged president. You have to look at the way he governed. You have the way, the ideas that he advanced during his time. Yeah. What were his legacies other than that? So you have to look at all of that before you call somebody a hero. By some of the statements he has made about running APC and also going after those
running
people,
a parallel government.
Yes,
but you know that,
like that.
You know that he could be right there. Suddenly, all attention has shifted away from him.
But if you are a hero, that's what you expect. You have already said that you are quitting, and then you start getting ready to leave. That's what you expect him to do. And what else would you do when it's time for you to? I can see that as a human being, he ought to feel some sense of disappointment. But then they started going after those people, some of those people who were his enemies. He has not. He fired the MPA man, the IG, as if the IG was supposed to help him win the election. The people voted him out. I mean, it's as simple as that. So I don't really see anything heroic about what he did. But I think that it was, if you say it was commendable, then you can I can use that word. It was commendable that he did it. But to say that he was a hero, I think heroism requires a greater standard of values and courage than exercise. Having said that though, the transition thing, the contest between his transition team and that of Buhari is to be expected, because one group is saying that we have been in government, we know how these things run. The other group is saying, you guys bungled it, you don't even know how government runs. And then there's a collision of egos. And these things happen all the time, even in the presidential system of government in the US that taking this things from. We have found this even transition getting a little testy. We saw it with senior Bush and Clinton. We saw it with Clinton and Junior Bush. We saw it with Junior Bush and Obama. We've seen these things happen all the time. But this is time for statesmanship, where you want to rise above the pettiness of the moment. And that is what is really lacking in our politics today. We want people to rise above it. There are some people in the transition committee who want to impress the governor-elect that they are really loyal and that they are minister material, so they should start looking at them. So they are jockeying for position while appearing to be actually working the transition process. So there's a lot of self-interest
politicking going on. Why do you think that President Jonathan's re-election failed? Where do you think he went wrong?
There isn't that Goodluck Jonathan failed. Many. It was just one. But it began with first alienating important segments of Nigeria, and you don't do that when you win. He won in 2011 in a spirit and a blaze of triumphalism. You know, want to bridge the gap with the North. Immediately he won, and his people started saying, well, this is a pan-Nigerian mandate. It was a big mistake. They drew the map and they called it a pan-Nigerian mandate. It wasn't a pan-Nigerian mandate. It was a mandate that had much of the southwest, south-south, southeast, middle belt, and alienated the North. Having alienated the North, then you started running the country and you alienated the Southwest. He forgot that he won that election because of the Southwest. And nobody wins an election in this country without the Southwest.
Why does everyone say that?
Because the Southwest it stands as the moral compass of Nigerian politics. If we did not have the Southwest in Nigerian politics, and no other region tries to play that role, Nigeria, well, outside the Southwest, will have broken in pieces long, or will have been a big swath of tyranny. Because the Southwest is a bubbly, turbulent, moral, self-questioning region of the country. So it takes its politics very seriously.
Yes.
It is a place where you have heroes and villains contending with equal moral gravitas. Everybody wants to say, I am right. And then they give the people of the Southwest opportunity to see both. Unlike in the South where I come from, or in the Southeast, or in the North, where there is one strong establishment, and that establishment is defined not by moral values, but by power. And power and money, if you have those, you get your followership. You control the politics, you control the morality, you control power, and you impose your elite on that society. In the Southwest, it is very fluid. It's actually a quicksand.
Yes.
You have to be careful where you step your feet. That's why he alienated the Southwest. Then he created a religious divide in the country between the Christians and the Muslims. While pretending to be a uniter, he actually wanted to bring the ecclesiastical elite together and present himself as a child of God. And it gave the sense to those who did not belong to those groups
religions,
that they didn't really belong to Nigeria, or they didn't matter to the president.
I thought visiting all those churches and kneeling down in different churches, I didn't think it meant anything. But you're telling me that those pictures, you know, go to the essence of our politics.
People knew at the beginning when it started. He did that in Abuja, in one of the churches, and they bowed down, and people saw it as the first time that this man is really humble. I saw through it. I wrote about it then. But most Nigerians said this man must be a humble man.
Yes.
He's able to bow down before a pastor for prayers. He won the Christians over. And he won the Southwest. Christians or Muslims, whatever, he won them. He won them over. But when he started governing, it became clear that he turned himself into a pilgrim in Nigeria, moving from church to church. He never even pretended to show any appreciation of the Muslims in the society. So that's why the matter started coming up. And then, you know, religion is a very touchy issue. It's a matter you best deal with by not dealing with it at all.
By maintaining secularity, you will deal with it.
You maintain a dignified remove from all the essences of religious vanity, which is what it is when you are a man of power and you associate with the sacerdotal order.
Okay, so let's come to the role of the media now. Recently, the Vice President-elect meeting with the Guild of Editors said the media deserves commendation for a peaceful and credible poll. In your opinion, do you think the media had any positive role to play in these last elections, bearing in mind the roles that some of the media organizations played?
I don't think many media organizations did right in this time. I am able to say most of the media organizations were for the sitting president. And I say that with all sense of responsibility. And basically, I have no problem with the media taking a stand in an election process because I belong to a medium that also took a stand. But where I had problem with the media was in the way stories were exaggerated in many cases, and advertorials that do not stand the standards of best practices were allowed to run without any sense of mediation. That was where essentially for me, that the media went wrong. In the name of money, certain words and certain allegations were thrown out there in advertorials and were allowed to just go. That, I think, was not right. And the media has not even had any time to sit back to look at the role that they played during the past elections. It was in that regard that the media failed Nigeria, failed itself, and failed democracy. In spite of that, the elections went ahead, and the media also played a role in reporting things as they happen.
And what about orientation, voter education, and keeping the people abreast of what to expect?
Yeah, some papers did that, some newspapers did that, media did that in terms of education, some electronic media did that too. They did a good job. I would have expected more to be done in terms of educating the people about what does it mean to use card reader, what does it mean to use PVC, what's the difference between PVC and TVC, why are you not getting it, how to cut through the clutter of the divisiveness of language among politicians, and things like that. I expected that the media could have done better, but it's a learning experience.
Join us again after the break.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
Angela, that's a great question.
Great question, Angela.
Angela, that is a very great question.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
Yeah, very good question.
That's a good question.
This is an interesting question you put.
60 Minutes with Angela. Again, answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, it's 60 Minutes with me, Angela Jitumobi. On my hot seat today, Sam OMATSEYE is the chairman of the editorial board of the Nation newspapers. Now, let's look at the elections, especially some critical states. Lagos State, for instance. The message of the APC here, changed, the national message, almost worked against them here and threw up the question of indigenship yet again. Who is a Lagosian? What are your thoughts on this? Because you work in Lagos, you are not originally from Lagos State, but would you be able to contest for an election in Lagos State, and would you be allowed to, if you won, to take that seat?
The issue of indigenship versus settlers in Lagos was an unfortunate debate that happened. And it was not so for several decades.
Yes.
And the reason is that the indigenes, that's the Yorubas in Lagos, have always opened their arms to everybody that comes here to do business. Well, the problem arose in this instance because President Jonathan came to town and started to play the ethnic card, wanted to play the non-indigens against the indigens. You remember during the subsidy riots, and the statement was made that after all, the non-indigens in Lagos are more than the indigens. I don't know where he got his statistics from, but that is when you knew that the strategy was to play that ethnic card
and get the non-indigens to vote.
Trying to use the southeast, south indigens to play and band together against the indigens. It's unfortunate when you play politics like that. Apart from dividing the people along religious lines, you started dividing them along ethnic lines. It becomes very terrible, and I can tell you it actually worked against the candidate in Lagos eventually, because the consequence was that the indigens now woke up who wanted to vote PDP. So this is what they want to do. They want to use our land against us. It was something that you didn't see often in the Southwest, because the Southwest, of all the ethnic groups in Nigeria, opens its arms more, gave land to many of them, and so on and so forth. That was the root of the issue.
You think things will change now that elections have been won and lost? You think?
Yeah, there's time for management. It's time for the APC, Ambode, and the leadership in the party now to do the healing, especially now that Jonathan is out of town. The point needs to be made, though, that the problem about the non-indigenous running in Lagos was not the problem. The problem was the non-indigenous running as a non-indigenous. That becomes a problem.
Explain that again.
If I run as a Lagosian And I want everybody to vote for me because of me, not because I'm an Shekiri man.
I've lived in Lagos all my
Lagos
life.
And we are all together.
Yes.
I want to help us improve infrastructure. I want to help us improve education and so on. All of us will be fine. There will be no problem about that. But if you are running as a non-indigene and you are staking your claim as a non-indigene to win the votes and making sure that your campaign is to gather your ethnic fellows around you because you have the numbers so that you can get there, then there's a problem. If you are an Igbo man, you are not running as a Lagosian, you are running either as an Nnewi man or as an Anambra man. That goes against the essential grain of democracy or the idea of being a Lagosian. That means you are not really a Lagosian, you are a foreigner, you are an invader. That's what it means. That was the issue in this election. When Agbaje's ticket was mooted in the PDP, they wanted to give him a Southeast man as a running mate.
As his deputy.
As his deputy. That was how divisive and how maliciously strategic the plot was for Lagos. It's very wrong because it means that you're not really playing a democracy of inclusiveness, but a democracy of divide and rule, which is malignant in any society. It is what causes riots, what causes war in society. So in this case, people saw it, Yoruba indigenous now saw it as not a matter of right, but a matter of interest. And when interests become stronger than rights, society is endangered. That's why there's need for healing. The last time things like this happened was in the 60s, in the pre-independence era.
Yes.
When even the Yorubas allowed Zik to ride roughshod in the Southwest because he could speak Yoruba, he was one of them, and his greatest supporters were Yorubas. But then he started using expressions like it was the destiny of the Igbos to take over Africa and so on. And then you want to run to become premier. That's why they banded together and flushed him out. When they flushed him out, they went to the East. And when they had to make Eyo Ita a minority in the East, the premier, he worked against him and they knocked him out and put his kinsman there. So it shows that democracy cannot work when we have ethnic strongholds. That's why they say democracy is actually an ideology of consensus. You know, the people agree to do
come
things.
Together.
Obama could not have been president if he wanted to run as a black man. He ran as an American. The other one that ran like a black man, Al Sharpton and Mr. Jackson, didn't go far. Because in the democracy, you have to be a candidate for all and not for a few.
And as Governor Fashola winds down in Lagos State, I wanted your thoughts on the 8 years of his administration. Would you, for instance, like to see him play another role when he leaves office? What do you make of his administration in the last 8 years in Lagos?
Interestingly, I have to first of all say that I just edited and compiled a book of essays on Fashola's 8 years. That took the example, the era of Babatunde Raji Fashola as governor of Lagos. So I have to put that in first. And no matter what anybody says, Fashola was a gift, has been a gift to this democracy. His coming was very controversial.
He was an unknown
quantity. He was an unknown person at that time, and Ashiwaju just stuck his neck out for him. The foundation that was laid by Ashiwaju Tinubu was widespread and comprehensive, and you needed a man with the kind of imagination, with the kind of focus and energy and intellectual effulgence of a Fashola. No matter what you say about Tinubu, he has a talent for talents, and he picked the right man, and he has done a marvelous job, and that's why I call him the governor of example, because the way he has handled Lagos in the past 8 years has turned attention to the fact that this democracy actually can work. People have had criticisms of him. It's not perfect. Some people have said some of his policies have been very tough. Sometimes an irony, the same people said policy was tough, but the people who also praised him for what he did in Oshodi. And so you kind of say you want to win here and win there. But you know, in any administration you also live and learn. Lincoln was a great president, but he also had his chinks in the ability to reach out to some of his co-aides, but one of his aides, and his ability to connect with the media. He also had that problem at Lincoln. But eventually he's regarded as the best of American presidents by some people, by some accounts and so on. So he has done very well, and the performance of Fashola in Lagos gave fillip to some of the transformations that we've seen in other parts of the country. Osun, Oyo, Ogun, Ekiti, when Fashola was there, even at the beginning.
What, in your opinion, was one of the lowest points for Governor Fashola as governor of Lagos?
When certain segments of society were charging this regime of elitism, you know, the Okada riders, the issue of school fees. It will be vindicated in the long run, you know, in this regard. But it made it look as though it was their enemy, whereas what it wanted to do was save the society. I mean,
save them from themselves.
But you know, in democracies, that is part of the battle. Lee Kuan Yew did a lot of that, and I was telling somebody recently that if Lee Kuan Yew were to operate in a real democracy, would have been voted out long ago, and this country would not have reached where it reached. Well, that is the case of the benevolent dictator. Modern times do not lend themselves to that kind of government because of the explosion of multimedia, the increasing awareness and education of the citizenry. So, and the many underbellies of a dictatorial structure in modern society. So because of that, it's difficult for you to have that kind of thing. So if Lee Kuan Yew were in Lagos, we would just ignore the Okada drivers and say, look, what noise are you making? You guys kill people all the time. Go to Igbobi, you see all kinds of broken legs and so on. I'll show you all the pictures, and yet you say that is what you want to do to earn a living. They also have their own arguments that, look, we would like to do other things too, but you know, if I want to do,
I want to be a barber,
I don't have enough money because I have to pay for fuel, I have to pay for diesel, I have to do this, I cannot afford all of that, but I can just ride on my Okada and go there. But when you are governing, you have to try to reach the people halfway, but that's what he did. He made sure that you still operated in the side streets, but not in the major arteries of the way. But politics wanted to take advantage of it. And while Agbaje was saying that he was going to ride and so on, restore Okada, I don't think it was really sincere. Well, was he going to really bring them back to Ikorodu Road and things like that? And
to Third
Mainland Bridge. And was he ready to stake his own moral fiber to the debts that can result because of the restoration? So it's a matter of trying to create the infrastructure that will make Okada unnecessary so that people can move around. That's why this rail project Fashola has been doing is a great way out of it. But you see, development is a continuum. There's some things we have to suffer, you know, in the process. But the fact that I allowed Okada to walk in the arteries were played down by these people because probably they want to be on the major arteries, which was dangerous. And that is still the problem. And I think that the new governor will have to find a way to navigate this without alienating them. What we have to do is to make sure that the rail project is accelerated faster and so on. But Okada, to take them out of the streets entirely is very difficult to do. We may not do that. Maybe Kekena Pep will be the way out.
Alternative.
But Lagos is very big, the burgeoning population, and then the spread. I mean, other states are like a fraction of Lagos State in terms of population.
What would be your expectation then from the incoming administration of Akinwumi Ambode?
It's to continue where Fashola left off, in the area of infrastructure, for instance, transportation and education, and the way of creating jobs. A lot of jobs were created because of the various programs of Lagos, you know, whether in terms of Loma, Lamata, and it's going to work on the issue of housing too, bringing new technologies to come to play. But the first thing it needs to do is the healing process, the damage that has been done among the peaceful various groups in Lagos. I mean, the Igbos never said they were banding beyond the candidates. Hausa never said so. Yorubas never said so. In past, since 1999, people had always voted based on the credentials of the candidates. This is the election where this last year was the only one since 1999, or the only one in living memory since independence. That the Lagos election was bowled over by the paralyzing devotion to tribe and faith. And I think Ambode's first responsibility is to do the healing.
Join us again after the break. So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview, I like to think it's a conversation between two people, people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who become the news. And the whole idea is to inform, to educate, or to clarify, as the case may be. It is an art getting people to answer the questions that everyone is thinking in their minds. And that's what we try to do on 60 Minutes with Angela. I ask all the questions that everyone's thinking about and no one wants to voice. All the questions you always wanted to ask, you get those answers on 60 Minutes with Angela. Every week on this station, 60 Minutes with Angela, getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask. Welcome back. My concluding moments now with Sam OMATSEYE, the chairman of the editorial board of the Nation newspapers. Now, your opinions on elections in Ekiti State, Rivers State, where people say elections didn't even happen, and Ogun State and the election of the Senator Buruji Kashamu. What do you make of elections in those three areas?
Jega has said that he has no powers to reverse any verdict or any result passed down to him by his resident electoral commissioner. So even if Jega's mother, God forbid, is skilled in a senatorial district and the resident electoral commissioner says all was peaceful, in law,
he will accept it.
He has no right to say it was not. That is one of the structural dangers of this election. Jega is just a titular head who is there just to transmit what his commanders have sanctioned.
If you have a wreck who isn't strong,
who is already compromised,
yes,
the result is going to be compromised. And Jega has no right to say it isn't. That's why Jega says anybody has a problem, he should go to the courts. Yeah. Now, what we need is a system that has enough checks and balances to make sure that the institutions are foolproof, that only on rare occasions would you find that the judiciary is necessary, as you see in the United States.
Yes.
That is why I think that our answer to all of this is to make sure that we have electronic voting. And if you have electronic voting, everything goes down to center. The reason Jonathan lost this election was because of the card reader. Because if you see the election in Imo in 2011, they had 1.3 million people who voted for Jonathan. They had about 600,000 this time who voted for Jonathan. Maybe 500,000 plus who voted for Jonathan.
So that card
what
reader
happened to the rest? Did they die? Did the population of Imo reduce? The
by
same
half?
thing with Abia, the same thing with Enugu. They all had over 1 million voters for Jonathan. In Bayelsa, you had voters were about 800,000, something like that, who voted for Jonathan, or 900,000 who voted for Jonathan. They had less than 500,000 this time. That was the power of the card reader. We need to really go down, this new administration with its National Assembly. They need to go back to the Uwe's report so that we can go deeply into our culture and see those things in our culture that stand in the way of transparent and credible election. Because the structure of INEC as it is not enough for democracy. We have made progress in this last election, but from what we saw in South-South and the Southeast, especially during this election, where only 16,000 sometimes voted for the president, where only 20,000 in some places voted for the president, where they had 90-something% of the votes cast in one, is really disturbing. In the case of Rivers, my correspondent called and said, what you have here is not election, it's war. And we knew that from even before the elections. Look at what happened at the APC rally at the waterside. We saw that things were not normal. In Ekiti, one of the great things in democracy is that the people have a right to pick who they want. So in democracy, the people are entitled to their own wisdom. They are also entitled to their own foolishness. So if you vote in a governor who will send talks around the place, and who will deceive you with chicken or Christmas, and you say that is governance. You are entitled to it. So I have no problem with the Ekiti people voting and living with Fashola.
Yes.
There's no problem. That's democracy.
Yes, but it looks now like the APC is turning into what people said the PDP was, trying to hound out this man from a seat where the Ekiti people lovingly voted him into.
Well, they are trying to follow the law. Because one thing about democracy is that you have to follow the rule of law. The people are supposed to yield to whatever legal means the APC lawmakers want to adopt to remove him. If they succeed against their own will, it is the greater will of the democracy which they subscribe to that has succeeded. If they fail, well, it is also the triumph of democracy. Yes. So the process should be allowed to take its full course. Yes. Except that Fashola is using impunity against the law, against the concept and the beauty and the grandeur of the rule of law.
But he is standing on the mandate of the people. Why is it that when he calls the people out and say, come and defend the mandate you gave me, they all come out, Mr. OMATSEYE?
Beautiful. That's why democracy is beautiful. You see, you can use impunity during democracy. And if the people want it that way,
yes,
all good to them. But if the APC men succeed in using the law to overthrow them, the people have no right to stop them. That is democracy. Democracy can destroy itself. Democracy has destroyed itself.
Yes.
Remember that Hitler was not imposed by fiat. It was democracy that put Hitler at the top of the German nation. It was democracy that put Franco at the head of the German nation. Mussolini at the head of the German nation. Democracy can self-destruct.
Do you see Fashola moving to the APC, for instance?
I don't know. It depends on the APC people.
Will they have him, you think?
I don't know. In these days of accommodation of
defectors,
yes, I don't know.
And what about Ogun State? People are still talking about the election of Senator-elect Buruji Kashamu. What do you make of that?
Well, if he won the election, he won the election. It's part of the beauty of democracy. If somebody is flawed, he has cases to answer, and you say you want to vote in, why not? Was that not the case with Fashola too? It's democracy. The thing with democracy is like a child. You have to allow it to learn by stumbling.
And then the presidential amnesty program.
Yes.
You know, since Buhari has won the election, you've seen people like Ateke Tom and a lot of the ex-agitators in that region and a lot of the people as well. Don't forget, the program now has included people who never fought in the creeks, just normal children affected by the agitation in that region and all benefiting from scholarships in different schools abroad. Do you think it's something worthy of consideration for the incoming administration to retain it?
Well, I think so, because there is need for peace in that region. It might not be comfortable to do it, but I think that we need to engage them, and it may not be at the level at which Jonathan has done, where he was giving them mega contracts to take care of our waterways and take care of our pipelines and things like that. No, we don't need them for that. What we need them to do is to put them on the way to integration to society. I think that is the way it should be done, and that is what we need from them. And the greater problem in the Niger Delta is not the issue of militancy, it's the issue of democratic dividend. In Rivers, there was this interesting story about education in Rivers State, where Amechi built a number of good schools and so on.
The model schools.
The model schools. And one of the administrators, who is a foreigner, said that the parents of the children do not appreciate
the schools
and what their children are doing there. Their children are like Ateke Tom and things like that. Why do you have to do all of this elaborating about going to school when those who go to school do not even
make money? Yeah.
It creates real problem for society. So the society is in dire need of enlightenment. That is the greatest problem in this society. And that is the problem all over Nigerian society.
Yeah.
It has always been a problem with democracies, that the people tend not to understand the issues, and you need to save them from themselves.
Yes.
That's why Rousseau said, force them to be free. But then that language is turned out to be a language of tyranny used by dictators down the ages. But what the essence of what he was saying was when he was talking about collective will, and the collective will became another language to me. I'm working for all of you to obey me. But what he meant was that we need to move as a people towards that place where the benefits spreads to everybody, where there's rule of law, where nobody is greater than the law, and where we can enjoy the dividends of democracy.
Of course, I can't have you here and not talk about the role played by the former governor of Lagos, Senator Bola Tinubu. The president-elect has said he has great respect for him, that he is a selfless person. The vice president-elect, Professor Shibajo, says Tinubu is a team player and an astute leader. So when newspapers like the Financial Times writes that the presidential election victory cemented Tinubu's reputation as a political Svengali with the role he played helping to orchestrate the downfall of President Jonathan, you know, you have to take note about these things. And love him or hate him, you can't but acknowledge that there's something this man must know.
They use the metaphor of Svengali. Svengali is a character in George du Maurier's novel, who had a girl that he had power over, and against the girl's will, the girl started to sing, and her voice became like the greatest voice in the whole world, as it were. And people were saying, well, if Svengali did not hold Trilby down, Trilby will not be that kind of star. You know, like a way of talking about Machiavelli, that the end justifies the means, things like that.
They also did say he's deeply Machiavellian.
The thing with him is that he loves the game of politics. And you see it in the way he talks, you see the way he thinks, and you see it in the way he surrounds himself with smart people. And the reason is that he has an eye to the future. He has an eye to his legacy. You cannot be a Tinubu and not have force of character. You cannot be a Tinubu and not be strong-willed. And if you're not strong-willed, you cannot be on top of any political game.
I'm told that even though he's strong-willed and tough, he does bow to superior argument. If you bring it forward.
Very interesting point. What many people don't know is that Tinubu is a reading man. If he's with electrical engineers, he's an electrical engineer. He wants to know a lot about electrical engineering, if it is important in this game of politics.
Yes.
When the AC had a lot of court cases, I saw a number of law books on his table. He was reading. So even if he had lawyers out there fighting the case, he wanted to understand what the lawyers were doing and wanted to talk to them too in their own land. As a media person, sometimes you want to cast headlines and tell you how the story probably was biased and what was not right about the story. And so you could debate that with him, but you knew it was something that you understood. He's a maestro in the sense that he loves this game of power. He loves it. He wants to make sure that power is not power for power's sake, because you have to use this power to do something. Forget that he was a lone star in 2003. When all the AD people were finagled away by Obasanjo. Lagos was the only one left. And everybody said, oh, he had made a wrong gamble. How could he allow himself to be isolated from all of it? Eventually, he did not only sweep all of them away, he built a coalition with stars. Fashola, Aregbesola, Amosun, Fayemi. At one time, Mimiko backed out, Ajimobi. You will see that the Southwest has become a model of development. Now he built a big coalition in the Southwest up to Edo. With that, he started looking at the center.
He evokes
contradictory emotions.
Complete loyalty from his supporters. And he also evokes such hatred from those who hate him. I mean, you've seen the lists of properties they say belong to him in Lagos. And, you know, people doubt that one man can really own all these things. After all, you sleep on only one bed in one room in your house.
Just like they say about Oriental. I think Oshibajo made a statement during his birthday, saying that people say that Oshibajo owns Oriental. He said if Oshibajo owns Oriental, that business will come to an end, because he'll just say, you man, go and sleep there. This person, go and sleep there. There'll be nobody. They'll make no profit. There'll be no room proper
accounting. What do you think is responsible for this near cult status that he has?
There's one quote that I always love. They say, when you're on top, you are the topic. It is because he has managed to outdwell all his opponents. Anytime they think that always, now we have had him, they discover that
they haven't.
They're just clutching at straw. Anything that you can throw to smear him, let's destroy him, let's do this, they will. But you discover that it's also the politician in Nigeria who has a big tent. You can see somebody abuse Shivaji with all the venom today, and tomorrow is on his side.
Why does he accept them?
Because he has no malice. Why does a person abuse you so ravenously in public? Destroy your personality so much in public? Work against you with such passion, and tomorrow you are on the same table eating. That's part of the charm, isn't it?
Okay, but on the other side, why do you think he is so vilified? People talk about his domineering attitude, his hand-picking of candidates.
Let me tell you, there's a story, let me demonstrate this. There's one story. There was somebody who was in one of the elective positions, and he saw me one day, and he had said he had gone through depression because was not allowed to return, and he started blaming
Ashiwaju. Yes.
Look at what we have worked for him, now look at what he has done. He gave the slot to somebody else, and so on. So I went to him and I told him, this is what this person is saying. He said, the guy is right. He has done very well, but it was beyond me. He mentioned the group that come and said, no.
It's time for somebody else.
You know, you got a sense that it was helpless, that if I fight this group will come and fight me just because of you. So maybe you have to wait. So he said that the person has to be patient. So things like this happen.
And people don't know this.
People don't know that somebody very close to him who remained nameless said, what people don't know that some of these things, these decisions that he makes are bigger than him. That you have to yield to certain groups because the pressure is tremendous. Because of that, you will say, okay, as a leader, then I weigh the options. Which one best suits the group? Which one helps us going forward? As a leader, you have to make difficult decisions. Your job as a leader is to make difficult decisions. And when you make difficult decisions, not everybody will be happy. But you want to keep the goal in focus.
What do you think will happen? How will the relationship between himself and Buhari play out now? Don't forget that he's elected. People are saying Buhari will stand as his own man, and people are actually looking forward and predicting
that there's going to be a conflict
they will
between
fall
him
out.
and Buhari.
Yes.
Well, that is left for the future. I cannot predict the future. But this thing I know is that human beings cannot live together without conflict. Husbands and wives can have conflicts all the time. It is the maturity with which they handle it that will eventually say whether they had the nation at the primacy of their thoughts or not. Because there's no doubt that everybody understands that without Asiwaju Tinubu, there is no APC. In fact, the greatest regret of Jonathan is that there was a man called Asiwaju Tinubu because when not that such a man existed, he would have been preparing not a transition team meeting another transition, but his own transition to his other term. That is how big he is. That's why I say that he is the greatest politician Nigeria has ever had, either before or after independence. He has created and galvanized the greatest coalition in Nigerian history, and also the first to use that coalition to knock out a seemingly impregnable foe in office. The consequence and scale of this achievement will be better appreciated perhaps maybe 10, 15 years,
not
or 20
today.
years down the road, when we know the impact it has had on our politics and governance going forward. And between the Buhari and Asiwaju thing, you understand that Asiwaju brings a big block, the indispensable block in our politics, the Southwest, to the table. Buhari cannot afford to ignore that block. That was the beginning of the fall of Jonathan, and Buhari should be aware. I wrote a couple of columns before the election about the Yorubas and Nigerian democracy, and warned that the Southwest always held the ace in our politics. You read the history of Nigeria right from the time of the colonial time. The Southwest has always held not only the compass but the moral compass. Just like that is why Lagos is what Lagos is. So when I'm talking about indigenous and not indigenous, and so on and so forth, and people are saying Lagos is for everybody. Of course, it's for everybody, but it has the people who own it. That Lagos did not start alone. That Lagos existed at the same time. Port Harcourt, Calabar, Lokoja, and all the other were being thrown up by the colonial officers. Yeah. There is a reason that Lagos is the one that stood out among all of the others. It has to do with the cultural enablers of that growth. And that is why I think that all those behind Buhari should always understand where they came from.
Thank you very much, Mr. OMATSEYE, for coming on the program.
It's my pleasure.
And thank you all for watching. I'm Angela Ajitumobi. See you next time.